If you want to know how to make loops like this, you're in the right place. Today I'm going to be giving you guys my ultimate guide to making melodies in the style of Cubeatz. Let's dive right in. Cubeatz is best known for their vintage, detuned, and dark melodic trap sound. They're responsible for a ton of your favorite songs by people like Travis Scott, Drake, Migos, 21 Savage, and more. A lot of their biggest hits are fairly simple melodies, but the sound selection and processing is what sets them apart from your typical sample maker. When trying to recreate this style of melodies, you first need to have the right mindset. The three things I'm going to cover in today's video are sound selection, theory, and effects and mixing. Alright, so for our first section of this video, I'm going to break down sound selection and instrumentation. To accurately create that signature Cubeatz sound, you first need to start by using the right instruments and sounds. The main instruments that Cubeatz are known for using are bells like glockenspiels, vibraphones, xylophones, stuff like that, flutes, of course, guitar, violin, synths, pianos, and occasionally some vocals. Now I'm going to show you some of my favorite VSTs to recreate that sound. For bells, we've got Mallet Flux, which is a fire contact bank. They've got a bunch of presets, super dope. If you use Omnisphere correctly, they've got a bunch of crazy raw bell sounds that sound super good for these kind of loops. And then also, if you've got Logic, I highly recommend just using the Logic stock bell sounds. For guitar, by far my go-to VST for these loops is Ilya Efimov Nylon Guitar, which is a contact bank. I've covered this in a previous video and I'll link it right here where I go more in depth with how to use that. But if possible, I would recommend learning how to play the guitar because live guitar sounds 10 times better for these loops. For synths, really all I use is Analog Lab and my Prophet Rev 2 hardware synth, which is an actual analog synth that I have here in my studio. For pianos, you can't go wrong with Keyscape, the piano from the Arturia V collection. And lastly, my favorite piano to use if I'm really going for a dark, detuned piano is this bank from Teletone Audio called the Golden Grand. As far as flutes go, there's a couple go-to VSTs that I use for these kind of melodies. The first one is the Bansuri by Ventus Ethnic Winds. Also, using Arcade's Passport series is a great way to add these ethnic flute phrases into your loops without actually having to write them in MIDI. Also, the Mellotron by Arturia has another great flute preset. It's called the Strawberry Flutes, and I use that one from time to time as well. For vocals, I would just recommend going on Splice or even Arcade and just searching something like dark or ethnic vocals. Also, a little self-promo, I've got a crazy dark vocal kit on my website vocalsupply.com, and you can use the code KXVI30 on there. It'll get you 30% off. Kit is crazy. You don't want to miss out on that. Another great lead instrument that Cubeatz uses a lot is the violins. And by far the best VST that I found for this so far is the Chris Hines solo strings. A couple other notable banks are Balkan Ethnic Orchestra, which is super good for that dark ethnic sound. Also, Spitfire has a solo strings contact bank, which is super dope. Now that you know the kind of sounds that you need to start with and a couple good VSTs to get those sounds, let's get into section 2, which is theory. The music theory behind these Cubeatz style loops is actually pretty easy. Typically, these melodies are super simple, but they're catchy. I see a lot of people trying to overproduce when they're making these loops, and they've got these crazy midis because they think that is what is going to give them that nice Cubeatz sound. But I'd argue that most of the magic in their loops is in their sound selection and processing. If we break down one of their biggest songs, Tunnel Vision, you'll see that they really only have 2 to 3 sounds in their loops, but they end up being hits. Alright, so now we're in Logic, and we've got Tunnel Vision by Kodak Black. I've pitched it up and changed the tempo just so I don't get hit with that copyright, you feel me? But this is what it sounds like. If you listen really closely, you'll see that all that it is a guitar playing some arpeggiated chords and a catchy flute topline melody. This loop is also very simple in the fact that it's really just a 2-bar pattern. Alright, now let's do a quick remake of this just to see what the MIDI looks like for these kind of loops. Right here I've got Ilya Efimov Nylon Guitar, and this is what the MIDI looks like for Tunnel Vision. So as you can see, it's just 2 chords and it just repeats over and over. And for anyone wondering what chords these are, it's an F minor chord right there. And then these right here, a C sharp minor chord. Now for the flute, I've opened up Bansuri by Ventus Ethnic Winds, and this is what the flute sounds like. It's really just following the notes that are inside the chord and adding a couple grace notes here and there. So super quick, simple remake, but you get the point. Now that you've got a better understanding on how these loops are made, I'm going to show you how I would go about making one of these loops myself. And for the preset right now, I'm using this Mallet Flux single, and I'm using the Celesta preset. So this progression is pretty much just one chord, C minor, and then on the second bar, we just take this middle note and drop it down. And that's how I ended up with this progression right here. Now what I'm gonna do is copy this MIDI and put it up with this other Celesta preset, which is from Logic. If you go over here on the left side and you go to orchestral keyboards and just choose the Celesta preset. And I layered these together and just panned them each their own way because I liked certain qualities about each bell and I couldn't decide which one to go with. So I layered them together and it gave it a nice thick sound. And this is what that sounds like. So that's pretty much it for the chords on this loop. Now let's get into adding a top line melody. For this top line melody, I'm going to use this Bansuri Ventus Ethnic Winds preset again. And all I've done to this preset to tweak it to give it that nice Cubeatz sound is I took the pitch wheel up here and I brought it up 12, so a full octave. And then I went down here and I brought the vibrato up. And what this does is just gives it a nice real flute kind of sound. Alright, so this is the MIDI that we have for the flute loop. I made a couple changes to the recording that I played, and this is what it sounds like so far. So all I did was pitch what I just played up an octave. The main thing that you want to keep in mind with these flute melodies is to keep it catchy and repetitive. As you can see, I've got this little theme right here where it goes from C, D to D sharp. I've got that going twice, and I've also got this F, D sharp, D with a couple grace notes in between here and there, but for the most part it stays in those two little themes. If you guys haven't already, you guys need to join my Discord. It's free and I'm collabing with people every single day. I'm giving out advice on how I sell beats, feedback on your music, and I'm sending collabs out with all the people I'm working with in there to all of my big connects. Link is in the description to get that, so don't miss out. Alright, so now I'm thinking about adding some guitar to this, and I'm just gonna follow the chord progression that I've been using. For those of you that aren't able to play guitar, I've remade the MIDI here for you. This is what we've got. And to break down the theory again, it's just a C minor chord. The top note is just down an octave. And then this middle note drops down again for the second part right here, just like in the bell melody right here. So far, our loop sounds like this. Now we're pretty much done with the music and writing part of this melody. Now I'm just gonna add one more synth sound just for a simple switch up in the loop. This preset is the synth stocking preset in my Confessions Volume 1 Analog Lab Bank. If you guys want that, you can use the code KXVI30 for 30% off loopstash.com. So what I've done here is I just drew in some notes, and those just give it that crazy, dark, evil vibe that we're going for. The next sound that I just added is this little electric guitar that I just recorded, which is just going from C to D sharp to D, which is the same theme that we have going with all the other melodies. Now we've pretty much done all of the melodies that we're gonna need for this loop. So it's time to get into section 3, which is effects and mixing. So the first sound that I'm gonna start processing is this guitar right here. And what I have for this guitar is I just have this preset that I have saved over here called New Saucy Guitar. First thing I did is just panned it to the left right here just to give it its own space in the mix. Then I hit it with this little EQ, clean it up a little bit. I just put this stock Logic compressor on it just to clean up the sound once again. Another EQ, just taking out frequencies I didn't like. And then I put this CLA Guitars, which is a Waves plugin, and I highly recommend it if you're trying to get into recording your own guitar samples. After those effects, it sounds like this. So it still sounds super harsh. What we're gonna do is take out some high end, add some reverb, and just give it that nice vintage feeling to it. So the first thing I did is I hit it with this Valhalla vintage verb, and then I added this very subtle H delay just to give it a nice kind of slap echo feeling. And then the last thing that I've added is just the Vinyl 2 preset from RC20, and I just took off the noise. So after all my effects, the guitar sounds like this. Now let's get into the flute. The processing on the flute is a little bit more simple because it is a VST, it's not live recorded, so it doesn't need as much work to it to get it to sound good. First thing I did is I just hit it with the Vinyl 2 preset again, and what I've done this time is I put the distortion up super high, and I changed the mode to crunch because I wanted this to have that nice vintage distorted sound to it, and I'll show you guys with that distortion bypassed and with it on. Lastly, for the flute, there was just some frequencies that were kind of harsh and I EQ'd them out. All right, now we've got the bells and the processing is super simple on these. I just hit it with the default Vinyl 1 preset and then I cut out some of the frequencies that were kind of hurting my ear a little bit. For the next sound, this little electric guitar pluck thing that I had, I just went into the electric guitar and bass presets, clean guitar, and then I just chose this surfing in stereo preset, and this is what it sounds like. Instantly gives it way more life and way more feeling, but I wanted to give it more character and make it sound more dark, so I added this special plugin which is insane, the H910 harmonizer, and I grabbed this void preset, and if you overdo this, it will sound horrible. As you can see, it makes it sound like it's falling, and if you just put it down here to like 16%, it gives it a nice feeling to it. So now we've got a nice bass mix for our loop, and this is what it sounds like. All right, now for our last couple sounds on this loop, we're just gonna add some textures and accent sounds just to help give it a nice authentic feeling to it. If you don't have any good synth one-shot kits, I definitely recommend anything by XY Nothing. You can also get it on loopstash.com with that KXVI 30% off code, a little self promo. So the first thing that I did is I just added this noise. And I took out a little bit of high end just because I thought there was some harsh frequencies. For the next sound, I've just got this little percussive accent sound. You don't want to add too much and then limit people who are trying to add drums on top of your stuff. You want to keep it simple. Lastly, we've just got these two synth one-shots right here. And pretty much the purpose of these is just to give it a nice distinct kind of sound to it, something that's recognizable. All right, now we've pretty much got our full loop done, but we're gonna go in and flip it just to take it to that next level. All right, so what I've done now is I bounced it into place right here. It's a super solid loop, it sounds great, but I've got some secret mastering sauce that is 100% gonna elevate your loops. And it's not cassette, it's not reels, it's not RC20, none of that for that detuned Cubeatz vibe, but it's this new plugin that I've been put onto called H910 Harmonizer, and this thing sounds crazy. This is the loop without it. And after. That just instantly elevated this from a good, cool, clean loop to something with crazy textures, and it sounds a lot more accurate to Cubeatz sound, in my opinion. So how I've used this plugin right here is I use this musical note intervals preset in this minor 2 down, which is really just pitching it down 1 semitone. One thing that you should be careful about though with this is that it does make everything slightly off time. So after you shift the pitch with this plugin, I would recommend bouncing it into an audio file and manually just putting everything on the grid. And in Logic, you can just do that by going over here and selecting polyphonic on the flex time and then just dragging everything onto the grid where it should be. The next thing I added was another instance of this H910, and I added this drum thickener preset. Pretty much all this is doing is distorting the loop and kind of making it louder. So this is without and with. So as you can tell, it distorts it, but it's not anything too crazy that's gonna mess up the loop or mess up someone's ability to add drums to it. Now that we've got it sounding like this, I'm gonna pitch it up 2 semitones, and then I'm gonna speed it up to 135 BPM, and this is what we've got. So that right there is crazy, but just to take it one more step further, what I'm gonna do is bounce that into place with all the new effects. And now what we're gonna do with this new audio file is first get rid of this little thing right there where it's off time. And then we're just gonna go right here and drag it to quick sampler optimized. You're gonna come right here and you're gonna have your whole sample chopped up for you. But what you're gonna wanna do is go to beat divisions and then drag this until it says either 1 or 2. But for this loop, I think I'm gonna go with 2. And then you're just gonna change the polyphony mode to mono, just so you don't have multiple samples playing over the top of each other. And this is how you're gonna recreate that signature chopped up fruity slicer sound that they do. And then I'm just gonna go to here on the attack, put it to maybe like 11 or so. And now all you're gonna do is just start from slice 1. And just copy everything up like that. And with that pattern drawn out, you should have this now. And that's pretty much it. You can go even further with this and rearrange the chop to make a whole different melody out of that one. But for this melody, I think it sounds good just the way it is. That's pretty much it for this video. If you guys enjoyed, please give me a like and a subscribe. I would really appreciate it and it'd help out the channel. Comment down below with any questions that you guys might have. I'm going to be answering every single one. And with that being said, peace.